The title of our presentation is Harnessing Data to Drive Impactful Healthcare Hiring Decisions. Well, we might as well go through some introductions. So you want to kick us off?
Sure.
All right.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm John Zubiena. I'm the CHRO of Washington. We have actually rebranded since this. We're Washington Health now. We're in the Bay Area of California, Fremont, home of Tesla. We're a 415-bed hospital, 2,200 employees. There are 12 of us in the HR department, so it's a little bit about the background of our healthcare organization, because I think that'll help when we start interacting about some of the questions and metrics. But and as far as me personally, I've been at Washington Health for 7 years, and in healthcare for about 30 years. So
I told you I wouldn't make you do a fun fact.
So
I'm going to let you slide. He said that is my least favorite thing. That's a fun fact in and of itself.
There you go.
So, my name is Zach Coffey. I live in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. I've worked with Human for 9 years. Started as a recruiter, and then moved over to the solution side of things. But happy to tell you just a little bit about Human. We are primarily RPO, recruitment process outsourcing organization. We do a lot of other things with that, but we do partner with John and Washington in an RPO partnership. And really, when we think about our RPO partnership, it's focusing on these 5 pillars that you see here. So starting with dedicated people, management, and leadership, and a lot of eyes, a lot of ears with care and thinking about our partners. Again, fully dedicate our recruiters. So when I was a recruiter, I was fully dedicated to my partner organization, and Human really goes to the background. Process, we are not an organization that says you have to follow this process. I know John's process looks much different than a partner in Chicago or a partner in Jacksonville. While we do try to continually search for those optimization points and try to streamline the hiring process while still maintaining a great candidate and manager experience, we don't dictate what that has to be. Technology, we can bring technologies all the way from an ATS to AI tools that we're developing that does live phone screenings and some really cool stuff, to a texting platform or video interviewing platform. So we leverage technology where it reduces a recruiter's administrative burden. That is our entire strategy, but it all starts with a really great process, and then we can bring in really awesome tools. Digital recruitment marketing, so it's a part of every one of our solutions. Generally, we absorb the strategy as well as the budget for the positions that we are responsible for. So an organization, Washington says, hey, Human, I need to engage you to go hire X, Y, and Z. Well, we get to take all of that off of your books, and that even includes those dollars and licenses that you're spending to go out and find these people. And then the last piece, and this is kind of what we're here to talk about today, is reporting and data. And we really our reporting starts with a Power BI, our Power BI team and dashboard to really give our partners real-time access into what's happening at Human. There's never a guessing game as far as what's happening in the partnership, making sure that we're staying on pace to hit those SLAs and reach all of those goals. So a little bit about us. I promise that's the only sales I'll do. I'll throw this up, and we'll speak to the slides, not directly about them, but this is just kind of some of the things that we measure as we think about that top of the funnel down. So when a candidate applies all the way to the time that they have accepted an offer, and then even beyond that where we can measure. And so, John, I would just kick it to you and say, what hiring data do you find most impactful, most useful when you're making decisions?
Sure, and I should probably also say that, just so everybody realizes, we don't have a talent acquisition department. We have it all outsourced to a third-party RPO. So I just think probably as you listen to us talk, you probably just need to understand that as a background. But in terms of what we look at, Human does a great job of providing us with, time to fill. We don't do cost to hire, but time to fill is probably the most important metric that we look at. We hold the recruiters accountable every week to that time to fill. If I don't see activity, we meet every Thursday, and we go through all of the openings. We're very fortunate. we have under 65 openings right now. We're, like as I said, 2,200 employees. We have about 65 openings, so we can really spend the time each week and go through each individual position. And so I look for what has been the activity in the last 2 weeks. If there hasn't been activity in the last 2 weeks, I want to hear why and what's going on. The other metric we like to have and look at is how many candidates are in the pipeline. I was at a previous session this afternoon, and it's almost like this will be a repeat of some of what you may have heard earlier if you were in that session, is how long does it take the manager to look and click on those applicants and find out who's in the pipeline, and so that's another important metric that we look at. Of course, turnover. Everybody looks at turnover and what the turnover is. We're, again, very fortunate being where we are, and that we have a fairly good pipeline of talent in the local area. And our turnover statistics are that we're 14.85 overall hospital-wide turnover and 9.85 in nursing. So we enjoy a pretty low, turnover rate as well. So I think those are a lot of the high-level metrics that we like to look at when we're looking at making decisions.
I didn't ask you about this earlier, but I'm interested to know how you like the data presented to you.
Exactly the way it's presented. It's in a deck. We get a deck usually in the morning or perhaps the night before, which would be Wednesday night, Thursday morning. It's all there, and then we just simply go through the deck, and we're used to seeing, the same metrics each week. So, having it in a deck and a slide, it's in a PowerPoint is very effective for us.
Yeah. Awesome.
Very good.
And I'll keep clicking a little bit here, but this is a tool, and I mentioned our Power BI dashboard and how we leverage our team to really give us access into knowing what is happening here. So as we think about what we're measuring, we're always thinking about how we move folks through the process quicker, right? But oftentimes when you start to move through quicker, you lose that culture fit. You lose the ability to really potentially go out and find the right people. So I'll start, what role, regardless of position, does speed play in your process and your hiring success?
No, it's important, and there is, I think we all know, is a delicate balance between getting through the process, because it's the war on talent. There's, if we don't hire that candidate, there's another facility just down the road is going to hire that candidate. So it's important to, be very timely. That's why we want to, look at how quickly are the hiring managers clicking on those applications, and then, being able to, hopefully shorten the time period from that time to when we actually bring the candidates on site. We have both ends of the spectrum. We have managers who will make a hiring decision within 20 minutes of an interview, and then we have other managers who are taking several times for the candidate to come back. Of course, that's not a very good candidate experience, but and even if a candidate has to zoom back in after maybe being on site, that's still not a good candidate experience. We would like to see them do everything in one visit and then make their decision. So it's a delicate balance. One of the things that I think we could do better, and we are going to do better with our new brand, is to, and by the way, also not only do we have a new brand, but a new mission, vision, values, the whole enchilada. And so I think we're going to begin developing some common behavioral interviewing questions that we're going to probably ask our human recruiters to do some screening based on those questions, so that we're making sure we're getting a cultural fit, or at least somewhere in the process we're discussing culture. And I always rely on the hiring managers, as we know, because they're tasked with a number of different things, but at least if we can get a sense that if there's some kind of red flag that comes up during that screening process, then maybe we shouldn't move on with that candidate. And then hopefully the managers are also, they're hopefully seeing if there's a cultural fit with their department. I think, we're trying to get if there's a cultural fit with the organization, based on our 5 values, and then hopefully, we turf it to the manager, the hiring manager, to get a sense, will this candidate fit with the unit's culture? Because we all know every unit is a little bit different and has its own culture. So.
Yeah. I think about that a lot, and I come to these conferences and I see a lot of us talking about people as data points, right? And when we're moving hundreds and thousands of folks through, there's often that element of losing that culture fit, losing the personal touch. How do you reinforce that with hiring managers to continue? And I know you mentioned training and all of those things, but in a day-to-day, how are you reinforcing the culture fit, I guess?
And making sure that, well, I would say that we are, we have the recruiters, and again, because we have such a low number of openings right now, that wasn't always the case, we're actually, the recruiter is able to spend more time with that hiring manager, sort of, talking through, what did you see, what did we see? And so I think that's one way that, it works pretty well.
Show of hands, how many people have troublesome hiring managers? At least one, right? Everybody, it's something everyone can relate to. So I'm not going to step through each of these, but this is what some of those scorecards really look like in action. There's a few examples of partners here, and I'll show another one with some rural partnerships. In an industry where patient care is that top priority, how are you ensuring that hiring and these data points aren't taking a back seat at the organization?
Right. I mean, nurse managers, well, any director really in healthcare now has so many different competing priorities with, yes, absolutely, patient care being number one. And of course, they need the staff to be able to do the patient care. So you would think that it would be prioritized a little bit higher sometimes than what it is. So I think what we have to do is we do a gentle nudge, again, through the recruiters on a weekly basis. If we don't see activity, then we're saying, hey, what's going on? Have you heard from? Have you touched base with? What have they said? We're really getting very specific by position, because right now we have the luxury of being able to do that.
So thinking, from our end, I showed you that funnel a couple of slides ago. And so ultimately what we care about is the hires that we're pumping through. As you're looking through the top of the funnel down, so those, applicants to the presentations, to the interview, to the accepted, what jumps out at you? And are there any numbers that jump out at you, or ratios that you say, these are really important, this is where we need to spend some time?
Sorry, repeat that with the...
So just the ratios, say presentations to interview, presentations to offer accepted. Are you thinking about that in your position, or are you relying on the TA team?
I'm relying on the TA team.
Okay.
That's why I had to ask you what... I'm relying on the TA team to do that. Yeah.
Sure.
We don't really look at that so much. We're sort of relying on your folks to do that.
I'd love to hear from the audience. Is there a data point that jumps out as you're seeing these here, that you say this is most impactful for us, for our organization, or something that maybe we don't have insight to, that we would like to have insight to?
Well, I'll tell you one I wish we had, and I'm thinking after hearing about PI in one of the earlier sessions, is I wish we could predict, turnover and where, who's the flight risk and those kinds of things. And so I think, perhaps AI can help us out with some of that down the road.
Yeah.
Hi, thank you. I just have a question. Can you define what is presentations, offers accepted referring to?
Yeah, so presentation is really just candidate applies. We've screened the candidate. We're presenting them to a manager. That manager is deciding whether they want to interview them or not. If they do, then that would be a submission, and then so on and so forth throughout the process.
So sorry if I'm not totally getting it, but so what is the 2.5, 2.6, 2.9?
Oh, yeah, sure. So that's our ratio there. So presentations, so if you look at the first one there, Cincinnati, 2.5 presentations. So we have presented a candidate to the offers accepted. So
that's the same job, same manager. That's what that's referring to.
That is right. And this is across, all the jobs and our average for each of these systems, as well as individually in our organization.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, of course.
Around just a little over 2 ratio to, thank you, 3.2 ratio, because you moved from 518 to 800. we normally struggle with the similar kind of 9% conversion, and this is getting to around 11% conversion. Is there some strategies that you constantly think about as you crunch this data to improve these conversion rates?
I'll let you fill that one, Sean. So thinking about conversion rates and how we improve that.
Yeah, I think, well, I do think it's in the timeliness of, excuse me, the timeliness of, interacting with that candidate, getting them in, clicking early on and making sure the hiring manager is looking at those candidates, acting quickly to, schedule interviews, to do the screening interviews, getting them in for the actual interviews. Otherwise, someone else will be glad to take those candidates. So I think that's really the key. I would say the most important metric, I think, is that, that metric of, how long is it taking to get the candidates in the door?
And I think when we think about conversion, and for us, it really starts with, are we telling the candidate what the job is, right? Are we selling that EVP? Your recruiter is the only salesperson that you have in HR. So is a candidate coming prepared with an understanding of the role that they're getting into, with an understanding of the unit that they may be working on? Again, if they're on site and they're coming to visit, are they actually going and seeing it? Are they able to shadow? Are they able to ask questions that they're going to be facing? And when you do a great job kind of all the way through that process, you're bound to see better conversion, right? Because you're not bringing candidates that get there and say, this is not what I thought it was going to be.
The hiring manager decision time at the point of submission to interview and then interview to hire, and who is doing that? Is it you, human, or this side? And are you giving those results by manager to Washington?
So I'll let you speak.
Yeah, currently, no. We are, we're not, we're not tracking that on our end, but we are relying on, the recruiter to give us that information.
And I would say, on a deeper level, that is something that we are tracking internally. So we even go so far as to put SLAs, if we guarantee a number of hires that we're going to make, well, we'd like some SLAs on the other side. And generally, what we see for best practices are after submission, 48 hours to decide whether you want to proceed with a candidate, 7 days to interview, and then 24 hours after an interview to decide whether you want to decline or offer that candidate. And so we do measure that because oftentimes it is tied with the throughput and the guarantees that we're putting on hiring goals.
There's also, not directly related, but we also have an SLA with the recruiter that they reach out to the hiring manager within 48 hours of receiving the requisition. And in our organization, those decisions all happen on one day of the week. So that's Thursday, the CEO VP group meets, and then on Friday is when a lot of our positions are released. And so we're expecting, the recruiter to reach out no later than Tuesday, probably, and having that discussion again about what is the right fit candidate for that position. If it's an RN position, it's usually that's been established. They still reach out, but the conversation's much shorter. But if it's going to be a unique one-off, and because of the size of our organization, we're kind of a tweener organization. We're not a large system, but we're also not a critical access hospital. So our managers try to create positions that are like, a purple unicorn. They're trying to put everything into one job description. They want somebody who's going to meet all those qualifications. And I think that's where I see a lot of it's that FOMO. They leave the candidates in the queue. They don't act on them because they're not seeing exactly what they want, and they're going to keep waiting until that purple unicorn comes along, instead of really, working the group that they've got and saying, look, okay, I can get 80%. Use the 80-20 rule. If you can get 80% of what you're looking for, hopefully the other 20 you can either train for or find another way to get it accomplished. But that's, I don't know anybody else who has a facility our size. You may run into that same thing because we're not a huge system that's got a whole department or a person to do certain things. You have to kind of put a bunch of things into one job description. FTEs are limited, so, put it all into one and see what you can get.
And I would say there's the expectation and the goal, and then there's the reality. There's always going to be a one-off, right, where we don't get back to a candidate. We are looking on an average. And where there are opportunities, not to expose a hiring manager, but to give a leader, hey, listen, we're really seeing a bottleneck here, and that's not meeting the benchmark of the rest of the organization. So we need to talk with that hiring manager, right? So it's an escalation point to us. We try to maintain that relationship so we can urge the manager to give that feedback. But it is just giving the data points to leaders to help reinforce those things.
And that's what comes out of that Thursday weekly meeting is we look and, the recruiters, we chuckle because it's my favorite part of the meeting. All the others are just numbers, but this is like, let's get into the meat here and see what's open and what's been going on. And, when you're a small organization, you also kind of know some of the candidates. And we're also, I should have said earlier in the introduction, we're a unionized organization. We're 80% unionized. So, a lot of the churn is happening, the day shift or the night shift person posts to the day shift opening when you have an opening. And so there's, all positions are posted at the same time, but those that are actually filled externally, come down to, a fewer amount, obviously, so.
Hi, thank you so much for your presentation. I have probably 3 questions.
Okay.
So first, are the scorecards available in a dashboard format for large organizations? My other question is the qualitative of candidates that are being hired. How do you measure that to understand whether a recruiter has an opportunity or whether a hiring leader has an opportunity? If our candidates are being hired but walking out the door within the first year, then,
Yeah.
And then my last question, I forgot.
Okay, fair. Well, why don't you hang on to that microphone? If
Yeah.
you think about it, ask. I'll say just strictly on the dashboards, yeah, absolutely. So we can look at it from an integrated, non-integrated standpoint with the ATS. Definitely. We work with partners where it's literally a link, where anyone with the link in the organization can have instant access to all of those things. I'll let you talk first about the quality.
Quality, yeah. So that, I guess I would be interested if anyone has a good way of measuring quality of hire, because that is something that I would say is maybe a weakness we have. All we have to know is, whether there was turnover, but just because there's not turnover doesn't mean the candidate's a quality candidate, and they may be a problem. And of course, we'll find out about that through, on the other side of the department and the employee relations side, have become a problem, oh, that was not a good hire.
Yeah.
And we've had some of those. But I mean, overall, I would say, we do a pretty good job, but it would be good to have some metrics to back it up to say that, we're doing a good job and there's we've attracted quality candidates.
And I would say for us, generally where human is responsible is from that time a candidate applies to the time the offer is accepted. And then generally it's handed off to an organization's onboarding team. So the good candidate, bad candidate can oftentimes get pinned on TA, right? Well, they left after only 6 months on the job. How's that manager, right? What was the expectation of what the manager told them in the interview process? Is that manager, and there are so many statistics that we can go through, and how much time is the manager spending recruiting? Well, if they're spending a ton of time recruiting, they're not spending time engaging employees. So you're missing out on a ton of employee engagement, which is going to lead to turnover, where do you pin that? Was it a bad candidate? Was it a bad process? And so having this data and great data points to look at least gives you the ability to begin to identify some of those things. Are we missing and they're turning over within the first 90 days because it wasn't a real expectation of the job? We didn't onboard them well. Or is it 6 months down the line and we need to go back and maybe there's an opportunity to train managers to engage employees better?
Back to me.
All right.
It was about culture. So how do we ensure you have a seamless candidate experience where it is an outsourced function, but still reflective of the culture of the organization so that we are transparent in who we are?
Great question. Initially, we like to get the recruiter, if possible, to actually visit, Fremont so that they can see the hospital, And then they're, because they are really our marketers, for the positions, for the facility. And they answer the hospital, or answer their phones, Washington Health, Human Resources. So it's very seamless, hopefully, to the candidates that we even have a third party. They have a Washington Health email. So, hopefully, it'd be an interesting question to ask some of the candidates. Do you realize that that's not, somebody who sits in our department and is a third party? Because I think that, we do a good job of kind of bridging that so that the culture does come across by the recruiter when they're, when they're selling the job. And because they've spent time, hopefully, in that initial intake call, they have a pretty good idea of what the manager is looking for. Plus, after they've worked with the manager for a period of time, they also know the manager and can even talk to the manager, kind of, upsell the manager even. So,
And even on another level, like so before I was like a corporate guy, the best waste of a degree I could come up with was be a professional musician. And so sometimes I come into these things and I look at how simplistic some of the data can be, right? And how simplistic engaging a candidate better, where it's, hey, when I was a recruiter, you know what I studied in my metro area where I was recruiting? I studied migratory patterns and maps. And I know they didn't want to drive across this bridge or this highway. And so really embedding yourself into that community and into that system can only be done when recruiters are fully dedicated, committed to that organization. And I think that's such a big thing that is often overlooked. It is a partnership, not just a vendor relationship. And that's where you see real success.
and then keep in mind the candidate, even though they're speaking with someone, who's talking to a third party, they're still meeting the hiring manager. And so that culture also, we rely on the hiring managers to, express what the culture of the organization is, as well as the culture of their own department. So I don't think we miss much on that. I don't think there's a misstep there. I think it's pretty seamless.
Outsourcing the function has contributed to its rec load and time to fill being decreased?
Great question. So I will tell you that how we came to actually outsourcing was I came as an interim. I never left, by the way. And I was there probably about 3 or 4 months, and our recruiter left. I won't get into the story, but it's a dark one. But anyway, and then there were none. And so then we had to look at, what do we do now? And so we took 6 months. The reality was, at that point, we were a post and pray shop. So, truth be told, we were able to take an administrative assistant who was at our front desk, who supported the recruiter, and actually have her do the work that the recruiter is doing, because he really wasn't recruiting. He was just doing electronic paper pushing. So with that, we had one recruiter, and then we had someone at the front desk who was, kind of supporting him. Fast forward, we, like I said, we studied. We could have just backfilled the one recruiter, but then we were in the danger of one single point of failure again. So what we were able to do is actually hire 2 recruiters this way, because we didn't have to pay the LinkedIn seats. We didn't have to pay for a lot of recruitment expenses. And so honestly, our CFO was all in, because we didn't save a lot of money. There was some savings, but we didn't increase our costs by adding another FTE. So it truly was it's been a great partnership. It's really worked well. You had another part of the question I didn't get to.
Recruiters do you have?
2. Yeah, 2. Now we have 2. We only had 1 when I started. Now we've got 2. And yes, I attribute the fact that we only have 65 recs right now to that ongoing relationship. Because when we first started, I think we had the recs were up to about 120. So it's probably down by about half. And by the way, I would say probably out of that, maybe 25 are nursing positions. So I think there's been a theme earlier too that, it's a lot of the allied health positions that we're having more difficulty filling. And I think that is the case with us as well. Filling some of our exempt level positions, because beautiful weather in the Bay Area, but very high cost of living. And so to try and get people to move to the Bay Area, that's our biggest recruitment challenge, quite honestly.
We're out of time. We would love to chat with any of you. I can show you that Power BI dashboard. I'd love to talk with you about anything that you're interested in seeing more. John will be here
absolutely.
Through tomorrow. I'm here. Thank you so much for listening to us and interacting with us. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Zach. Thank you, John.